Hey ladies and gentlemen, Steven here from Redolessence. Welcome back to another video. I hope you're all staying safe and well during these very difficult, uncertain, and volatile times. In today's episode, I'm going to be doing a comparison between Acqua di Gio, Profumo, and Profondo by Giorgio Armani, so make sure to stay tuned. So it seems like ever since I published my review of Acqua di Gio Profondo, at least once a week I get a comment from somebody, and this has happened in live streams as well, where people ask me, which of these fragrances do you prefer? I know a lot of people are probably privy to the fact that this is my favorite flanker from the line. I know there's Absolute, there's Absolute Instinct, there's Essenza, I know I have the special blend, but there's also the original variant, and I have expressed on a number of occasions that this is my favorite. Now, when this came out, I know I said what I said in my review, and I still stand by it, that it's a nice release, it's mass appealing, it's pleasant, I don't get much of this mastic oil ingredient that's used in there, and I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people, but people want to know what are the main differences between the two, and of the two, which one do I prefer? Is this one mass appealing enough that I actually prefer it over the Profumo variant, or is there still something about this variant that is still special to me and something that would encourage me to reach for this one over this one? And also I'll try to break it down in terms of what occasions each one is appropriate for, what seasons each one is appropriate for, because as I'm given understand, as I'm sure you know as well, one of these is a bit heavier than the other, not just in terms of the genetic makeup and what ingredients go into it, but also in terms of how it performs on skin. All right, so let's go ahead and start. So this one came out first, obviously. This is a flanker of the original Acqua di Gio. It came out in the mid-90s. The perfumer is Alberto Morillas, and it is one of the most successful fragrances of all time. It is an aquatic, oceanic, ozonic fragrance. It has the lime, it has the jasmine, it has the kalone, it has a lot of these fresh notes that are being utilized in there. And then of course they came out with what I perceived initially to be a darker variant just because of the color of the bottle, and then when I finally smelled it, it validated that for me. I said, okay, yeah, this actually is a little bit darker than the original ADG. This fragrance, if you're not familiar, has a patchouli note, and it also has a bit of incense in there. Now, the incense note or term should be used very loosely. I think a lot of times when people think of incense, they think of this smoke that is spiraling off the cone or the stick, and there's nothing about this fragrance that smells smoky. As a matter of fact, you might get some warm resins underneath everything else. You can tell there's a darker energy that is sort of lifting everything up. But at no point would I smell this and say, oh wow, this is smoky, or this is dark, or this is challenging. Absolutely not. I think in terms of wearability, it's kind of all the way up there as much as the original is. Now, look, the original has a citrus, it has the clean white florals, it has the oceanic aspect about it, so the original is very easy to wear. This one is a little heavier, it's a little darker, but it's not daring, it's not bold by any means. This is still very wearable. It's still the type of fragrance that you want to wear when you want to be mass appealing. And I would argue it's a lot more wearable than like an Acqua Amara, which can come across smelling a little bit salty, or even the original Acqua by Bulgari. And there are also fragrances like Gucci Guilty Absolute, which kind of has like this dark, smoky, leathery vibe. There's also Dark Rebel and Dark Rebel Rider by John Varvatos. So this one is infinitely easier to wear than those fragrances. So just keep in mind that there are a lot of other fragrances on the market that are a little bit harder to wear, and this is not one of them. Despite the fact that it has the patchouli and the incense, it could kind of give one the impression that it's a little bit on the darker side. Now, as a contrast to that, we have the newly released Profondo. Profondo means profound, and when you think about it, this one is fresh, like the original, which came out in the mid-90s, but there's something about this that's also a little bit different. So I know it kind of goes in blue territory, and by taking a look at the color of the bottle, I think that that sort of gives it away. I don't think it's subliminal. I don't think it's subconscious. I think it's just obvious, right? Like there's this blue trend that is going on in the industry as of late. A lot of companies are dipping their hands into the metaphorical pot, and I don't think Giorgio Armani is any exception to that rule. I think they're playing off of the same rule book. Now, with this particular fragrance, When I first read the note breakdown, I said, this sounds interesting. There are a lot of ingredients in there that really piqued my curiosity. One ingredient in particular, like I mentioned earlier on in the video, it's called mastic oil. It's also known as lentisque. Now, country where I come from, which is Greece, I was born in the United States, I was born in New York, but I actually lived in Greece for a few years between kindergarten and second grade. I consumed a lot of mastic, which in Greece is called mastica, and they make desserts out of it, they make chewing gum out of it, and I'm very familiar with the way that it smells. It's actually used in its natural form in a lot of other indie perfumes as well, some of which I own, and so I see the potential that it has when it's used in a lot of these independent creations. In the case of a Profondo, there's none of it in here, which surprises me. And I've worn it several times. I've actually put a bit of a dent in here. I don't know if you can tell, but I think it's like 80% full. I know I opted for the smaller bottle, which I think is, 60 ml or 30 ml? What is this? 40 ml. So they have really odd sizes on these. But I still wore a lot of it despite that. And as much as I've been wearing it, it has a blue quality about it. It has an like a modernized oceanic quality about it, but it doesn't have that mastic oil in there. So this fragrance's claim to fame is the mastic oil, which my nose isn't picking up on. This fragrance's claim to fame is the patchouli and the incense, which my nose is picking up on. So in my opinion, this is a more accurate representation and a more honest representation of the note breakdown, whereas this one, I don't want to call it a marketing gimmick because I don't think it is that. I think if we were to look at a lab analysis, it would determine that there is a little bit of mastic oil in here, but it's so disguised that my nose isn't picking up on it. And it's an ingredient that I'm very acute to smelling. Anyways, so getting that out of the way, which one of these is fresher? Hands down, Profondo. Which one of these is darker and more intense? Profumo. Which of these is the easiest to wear? They're both equally easy to wear. Which one gives more of a casual vibe? Profondo. Which of these do I think would be more suitable for a dressed up scenario? Both of them. Now, I know some people might be inclined to say Profumo, but here's the reason why I say both of them are equally good for like a dressed up formal occasion. Whenever you are dressed up, I don't think you want to, take any risks. Not to suggest that you're going to be taking risks by wearing this fragrance, but you want to wear something that is mass appealing. You want to smell well groomed. Unlike me right now, I've been in quarantine for some time. I haven't had a chance to catch up on my tight fades, but I think both of them are equally easy to wear, but I do think that there's something about this fragrance that's a little bit more likable on a mass appealing level. I would imagine that if I went out on the street and I stopped 10 women and I had them all smell these fragrances, in my mind, I think this is the one that will reign victorious, just because this one has a more likable DNA. This one, I like that it kind of pushed the envelope a little bit, but not too far. Just enough in the direction where it's interesting, but it's still very wearable and very likable. But when you're comparing these two, I really think you're comparing apples and oranges, because despite the fact that they both have the Acqua di Gio designation on them, they're quite different fragrances. I think Essenza and the original are quite similar to one another. I think Profumo and Profumo Special Blend are like identical to one another. But I do think that in the case of these two, they're quite different from one another. I think also there's probably something about this one that would make it more appealing for like a younger crowd, whereas Profumo might be more appealing for somebody in their 30s or maybe a little older than, I would say, like 25 and up. But again, as I'm sure you all know, and I say this all the time, these are just recommendations. Please go out there, wear what you want, wear what makes you happy. But the final verdict is these are quite different fragrances. They're both fresh, they're both oceanic, they're both ozonic. This one and this one both have a different claim to fame. For this one, it's the mastic oil, which I don't really get. This one is the patchouli and the incense, which is not a smoky incense. It's more on the ambery side, but ever so slight, lacking sweetness. It's still in that very fresh aromatic territory that we discussed earlier. They're both very, very likable fragrances. And I think the bottom line here, if you were to ask me which one is my favorite, I would definitely go with Profumo. Profumo to date is my favorite. Not to say that this was a miss. I like this actually a lot more than Absolute, which I found was kind of in the Invictus Aqua territory. And then Absolute Instinct, I think had a similar amount of sweetness, but went in a more creative and unique direction. But I think this one is the one that ultimately resonates with my personal taste. I've owned this for a couple of years now. This one is a fragrance that I really, really enjoy, and I find myself wearing it not just casually lounging around the house, running errands, but also to work because it gives off a very professional vibe. Just keep in mind that this one is probably going to be a little fresher and a little more blue, if I may use that term. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was my take on these two fragrances. I tried to make it as comprehensive as possible without really droning on every single note in the note breakdown, but I hope you have a chance to go out there and check these fragrances out. And I'm also curious to know which of these fragrances is your favorite. Go ahead and let me know by leaving a comment down below. Also, if you are new to this channel and you took something of value from this video, I would really appreciate it if you could support this channel by subscribing to it. It's the only thing I'll ask you for today. All you have to do is click that red button in the corner, and please also click on the notification bell right next to it. This way, whenever I do upload and publish future fragrance related videos just like this, it will get delivered straight to your feed. You're going to get that push notification sent straight to your mobile device. This way you will never miss any of my future uploads. And of course, that includes comparison videos like these, standalone reviews, top 10 videos, giveaways, unboxings, special guests, interviews, and a whole lot more. Thanks again for watching. I love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye.